Notre Dame's offense has a ton of potential this season, but they also have plenty of questions. And coming up, we're breaking down the most pressing question facing each position group on offense heading into the summer.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome in to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a producer at Fox Sports and have been covering the Irish since 2020. Pumped to have you here with me on Wednesday, May 28th. I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend, and thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. It really helps grow the show. And as for today's show, we're going to do a deep dive into the biggest questions I have about each position group on offense heading into the summer. I'm going to do the same exercise for the defense in a later episode, but today is all about the offense. It's going to be about the quarterback battle between CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey, the loaded running back room, whether the wide receivers will finally be a strength for this team, what Eli Raridan needs to do at tight end, and what Joe Rudolph's approach is going to be to who starts on the offensive line. But let's start with the quarterback. It's the most important position on the team and maybe all of sports. And I think for Notre Dame, they're going to look at this situation, and the biggest question that they have, and the same one I have, is the ceiling going to be enough to make up for the inexperience? And this goes for CJ Carr, but it also goes for Kenny Minchey. Because even though Kenny Minchey is older in terms of how long he's been in college, this is going to be his third season, he's barely played on Saturdays. And CJ Carr hasn't played at all outside of, I think he took the knee in the Purdue game, but he hasn't really done much either. But then again, both of these guys are very talented, and it's going to come down to their raw talent, their potential, and also their game readiness, because they have talent, but neither of them has proven it under pressure. Through no fault of their own, obviously. They just haven't had the opportunity, but now it's going to happen for one of these guys this fall. There's a case to be made for both quarterbacks. I've done it before. I did a whole episode on every single guy who was in the competition before the spring with Carr, Minchey, and Angeli. And I believe now that it's down to CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey, the arguments are a little bit more similar because they're both inexperienced. The main pro, I guess, for Steve Angeli was the fact that he actually had some game experience. But now you have two players with an extremely high ceiling, ton of raw talent, but zero experience. With CJ Carr, I mean, he's got elite arm talent, extremely accurate. He's got poise. He's got the pedigree, grandson of a national champion. He's been really groomed for this entire life. Like, he has been ready to take over a big-time college football program for a long time. He's been training for this for a very long time. He's got a very quick release. He's a strong decision maker, but he's still never played a snap. And expectations for him are sky high, and he's going to have to adjust to the speed of the college game, build chemistry with wide receivers, and when he deals with adversity, he's got to be ready to take it head on. Kenny Minchey, redshirt sophomore, one more year at Notre Dame, but the same amount of time in Mike Denbrock's system. He's also seen limited game action, but he throws a beautiful ball, has made a ton of plays in the spring games, just like CJ Carr has, and he also brings another dynamic with his mobility. All of these guys can run, but Kenny Minchey is definitely the best runner in the quarterback room right now, but there are some concerns about his decision-making. Most people believe that Carr is going to win because he's a little bit more ready at this point in his career. He's shown that he probably has the highest ceiling of anyone in that room, but there are risks involved there as well. Like, how quickly can Carr absorb everything that's going on in Mike Denbrock's system, not just the basics, not just the fundamentals, but then applying that into real live game situations, making checks at the line of scrimmage, something that's difficult for a senior to do, a fifth-year senior to do. They're going to be asking CJ Carr to do that potentially as a redshirt freshman. Is he going to be ready for the mental and physical demands of the full season? That's another thing that you can't really prep for until you are actually in the situation. And there are some quarterbacks who have absolutely thrived in year one as a starter. CJ Stroud did. Bryce Young did at Alabama. Trevor Lawrence did as a true freshman at Clemson. Caleb Williams got some time at Oklahoma as a true freshman. He thrived, and then he really excelled in his first full season as a starter after he transferred to USC. But then there's also plenty of other quarterbacks who eventually became very good but struggled early on. Guys like Bo Nix, guys like Jane Daniels, even Drew Aller, who I don't think has really proven it enough at the college level, but came in out of high school as a five-star guy. They crowned him as like the next great thing at Penn State, the quarterback that was going to get them over the hump as a redshirt freshman, and it just didn't happen. All of these quarterbacks had a ton of talent, but it took some longer than others for that to showcase itself on the field. And neither one of these quarterbacks have really faced elite defenses in a live game situation. They are going to have help around them with what should be a really good offensive line and plenty of playmakers, and they have all this talent. But it's going to be a question of, can they put it together on the field on Saturdays? And when they throw a pick, are they going to be able to stay the course and not let it get the best of them? Are they going to be able to fight through some drives that maybe stall out, but they don't let it get to them and they keep going? Because the schedule is going to be very tough out of the bat. Notre Dame does not really have time for a learning curve at the quarterback position when you look at this roster and you think about the goals that this team has. And the quarterback battle is the biggest question mark on the entire team heading into the summer. And Carr's ceiling is tantalizing, but his lack of experience makes him a gamble. But it was a gamble that they made in spring practice when they let Steve Angeli walk. Minchey offers a very intriguing skill set as well, but neither option is particularly safe. They're banking on talent. They're banking on ceiling. We'll see how that plays out for them this fall. Now, at running back, it's kind of the opposite. They have arguably too much talent. So my question for the running back room is, less is more, or the more the merrier? And what I mean by that is Notre Dame's backfield is absolutely loaded, but is the new running backs coach, Ja'Juan Seider, going to lean on the top two guys in Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, or is he going to try to rotate to keep everyone involved and everyone slightly happy? Because Jeremiah Love is the best running back in the country. He could carry this offense. He was just on the cover of EA Sports College Football 26. That was released on Tuesday. Marcus Freeman is right behind him. There's a bunch of other great college football players that made the cover, and then for some reason, Denard Robinson is on there as well, even though I know he was on the cover way back when. Kind of random. Same with Reggie Bush and Tim Tebow. All kinds of random faces in this game, but Jeremiah Love and Marcus Freeman were right there, front and center, and there's a reason why. It's because Jeremiah Love is extremely talented, and he is going to be one of the best players in college football this fall. But then right behind him, you've got Jadarian Price, who's an extremely talented player, a big-time threat every single time he touches the ball. And for as great as Jeremiah Love was last season, it was Jadarian Price who scored the first touchdown of the season against Texas A&M. It was Jadarian Price who came through big in the second half against USC, scored a big touchdown to get Notre Dame to the playoff after Jeremiah Love went down with an injury in that game. Those two make up one of, if not the best running back duos in the entire country. But behind them, you have plenty of talent. You've got Aeneas Williams, who shined for Notre Dame in the college football playoff last year, made some of the biggest plays of the season in that game against Penn State. Keidron Young, who's going to be a redshirt freshman, he has a ton of potential. He looks like he's ready to go physically, and now can he apply that to real-life game situations? I think he can if he's given the opportunity. Jabron Payne, who was taking away carries from Jeremiah Love and Audric Estime 2 years ago, he's back, and he's healthy. So where does he fit into the equation? When Ja'Juan Seider was at Penn State, he really just rotated two running backs, and then they'd also bring in their backup quarterback. I think his name was Bo Pribula. He would come in, and he was kind of acting as like a third running back. So Penn State did have three guys that they'd lean on to carry the football. At Notre Dame, I don't think they're going to lean on the quarterback as much, unless maybe they bring in Kenny Minchey in some run game packages. But I think it's mostly going to be on the running backs, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Seider goes about dishing out those carries, because Jeremiah Love is going to need a lot more carries. Like, there can never be a situation like we had last year when Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois and Jeremiah Love goes out there, hurdles a guy, makes one of the most amazing touchdown runs I have ever seen inside Notre Dame Stadium, and then he doesn't touch the ball the rest of the game. That cannot happen. You need to force feed Jeremiah Love because he is just that good. But also, you don't want to give him the ball too much early on in the season, because then, of course, you risk an injury. And we saw what happened when he got hurt in the USC game. He was just not the same player in the playoffs. So they're going to try to rest him and give other guys opportunities. Price is definitely going to be one of those guys. But, you know, when Notre Dame gets into adverse situations and the game is tight, they're going to have to feed Jeremiah Love. But then also with these young guys, you know, they could have entered the transfer portal. They want to get their shot on the field. It's their time to shine in their eyes, and they have the talent to do it. Aeneas Williams has done it on the biggest stage. So it is going to be a very interesting dilemma, I guess you could say, for Ja'Juan Seider, although it's a good problem to have when you have so much talent in the room. But it's just going to be a question of, does he just lean heavily on those top two guys and then just run them, and Notre Dame will probably deal with a lot of success, but there is obviously the risk of injury? Or does he try to rotate, take the Dylan McCullough strategy, get a lot more guys involved, which keeps them a little bit more happy, but then you could be, in effect, hurting your team if you're not giving the best player and one of the best players in the country the ball more frequently. So Seider has done this before. He's dealt with a lot of talented backs, but how he handles this situation is going to be a very intriguing storyline to follow throughout the summer and really into the fall, because that running back room is so talented, so deep, but there's only one football to go around, and one of those guys is head and shoulders above everyone else in the entire country. All right, coming up, could this finally be the year the wide receivers have become a strength, and is Eli Raridan ready to be the next great tight end at Notre Dame? That's next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Tyrese Haliburton has been unstoppable this playoffs, and you can back him up by betting on his over in points, rebounds, or assists. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. All right, we are now at 3-1 in both the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals tonight. We have got Oklahoma City taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves for a chance to win and secure their spot in the NBA Finals. They are favored by 8.5 against the T-Wolves, and guess what? I think they're going to win. I think they're going to cover, and I think they are going to punch their ticket to the finals. They have just been so good this postseason. Yeah, they had some struggles against the Nuggets, but other than that, they have just kind of breezed through this postseason. I think they're going to get the win tonight, and I don't think anyone is stopping them in the NBA Finals. And if you're new to FanDuel, now is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you will get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, my question for the wide receivers is pretty simple. Is this the year? Is this the year when the wide receivers can become a strength? Is this the year when our cautious optimism that we experienced throughout the offseason about this particular position group finally comes to fruition, and they step up and they start making big-time plays on Saturdays? Plays that they might not be open, but it doesn't matter. One of them goes up and gets a catch on a big third down. We have seen it in spots. Right? Jaden Greathouse looked like the Blitnikoff winner in the last two games of the season in the CFP semifinal and the national championship. So if you're going to come on, at least you did it on the biggest stage. But I had really high expectations for Jaden Greathouse going into the season after he had a terrific start to his freshman year that was kind of derailed by injuries, but he still showed a ton of potential. I thought he could step up and be wide receiver one last year, and it just didn't really happen. So, are we going to see the Jaden Greathouse that we saw in the last two games, or are we going to see more of the Jaden Greathouse that we saw in the 14 previous games? But it's not just Jaden Greathouse, because they went out, they got Malachi Fields out of the transfer portal. Malachi Fields is showing up on some first-round mock drafts and way too early NFL draft mocks looking ahead to next season. He was a very productive receiver at Virginia, and they didn't have a great quarterback situation either one of these past 2 years. But is he going to be able to bring that to Notre Dame and then make those plays against the best defenses that Notre Dame faces this season? We're going to have to see. Will Pauling was brought in from Wisconsin. He was really, really good a couple years ago. Last season, his numbers took a big dip. Part of that has to do with the quarterback situation in Wisconsin. They brought in Tyler Van Dyke out of the transfer portal. He got hurt, and then they didn't have a good quarterback at all. But then Notre Dame brings him in as like a security blanket. He's not a deep threat, but he's a great option on third downs. Can he provide that spark to the Notre Dame offense? And then there's Jordan Faison, the lacrosse player who has been electric in flashes, and then there have been times that really make you frustrated because he can't hold on to the ball or he just doesn't have the fundamentals of being a wide receiver down. Part of that is understandable. He's a two-sport athlete at Notre Dame. He was a walk-on coming out of high school, wasn't highly recruited at all. Then he comes in as a freshman, gets a touchdown in the game against Louisville, seemingly out of nowhere, and then has a good close to the year, Sun Bowl MVP, all that stuff. And I thought he flashed at moments last year, but he was also dealing with some injuries. So if he's able to stay healthy and if he's able to become more consistent, he could have a really big season. So there are four options in Notre Dame's wide receiver room that theoretically all could be very good. But we've also experienced this before where we had high hopes for guys like Chris Mitchell coming over from Florida International. He had over 1,000 yards for the Panthers, and he was considered this potential deep threat for the Notre Dame offense. He was going to take the top off the defense, all that stuff. And then he became like a possession receiver on a team that was, that had a decent passing attack, at best, right? Mike Denbrock even said that they had no faith in their passing game at all. And part of that has to do with Riley Leonard, of course. But still, the wide receiver room left a lot to be desired last year when I was a little bit more hopeful about them, certainly more than I was the year before with Tobias Merriweather and the other freshman wide receivers like Rico Flores and all that stuff. Like Sam Hartman thought he had a much better receiving room when he came over to Notre Dame than he actually ended up having. So when you look at this room right now, there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic, but there's also reasons to be concerned because outside of those top 4 guys, you don't have any other proven options. KK Smith is entering his junior year. What can he do for this offense? You got Micah Gilbert, who's going to be a redshirt freshman, but this was a very big spring practice for him. He missed the entire thing due to injury. Elijah Burris looked really good in spring, but he's a true freshman. Cam Williams is not ready. So there's reason to be excited, but there's also reason to be concerned, and I don't know what we are going to see on Saturdays this fall. I'm cautiously optimistic, like I said at the beginning of this, but until I actually see it on Saturdays, I'm hesitant to say that this will be the year when the wide receiver room finally steps up, Malachi Fields or Jaden Greathouse becomes a true wide receiver 1. Like, I'm hopeful, but we're just going to have to wait and see. As for the tight ends, we're also going to have to wait and see if Eli Raridan can live up to the hype. And that is my question for this group. It is the only question that I have for any of these position groups that is really focused on one player. The quarterback kind of is. It's mostly about CJ Carr because I do think he's going to be the starter over Kenny Minchey. But for the tight ends, it is so dependent on Eli Raridan. Can he live up to the hype that he had when he was a high school recruit, when he was a borderline 5-star, one of the highest rated tight end commitments in the history of Notre Dame, which obviously says a lot considering all the Notre Dame great tight ends that have come through this program. And he was considered the next great Notre Dame tight end, but then he had 2 really severe knee injuries that set him back. Last year, he was a decent tight end 2 option, but he also kind of split that with Cooper Flanagan. He did have his moments. His touchdown against USC was really big, but this is his year. He is tight end 1. This offense is going to rely on him. It seems like he had a really good spring practice, but it's going to be about taking that and then putting that on the field on Saturdays. He's got great athleticism. He has a ton of mismatch potential because of his size and his catch radius. Like, he could be a game-changing tight end, but there's also some concerns about his consistency. Like, can he be counted on in that way? When the defense knows the ball's probably going to him and it's 3rd and 5, like, can he still make the play? Because Mitchell Evans could do that. You threw it to Mitchell Evans. If it was anywhere in his vicinity, he was going to come down with the ball. Wasn't great at generating separation. I think Eli Raridan has more potential in that respect, but he just has to make those big-time throws because this young quarterback, whoever it is, Carr or Minchey, there's going to be times when they just need a get-out-of-jail-free card, and Eli Raridan could be that for this offense, and if he is, that changes everything. That makes running the ball easier with the talented running backs. It makes throwing to the outside even easier because now the defense has to protect the middle of the field, watch out for the stick route or the seam from the tight end, and then it just opens up way more opportunities for a young quarterback. And then behind Eli Raridan, you've got some intriguing options. You've got Ty Washington, the transfer from Arkansas. He brings some versatility, has shown flashes as a blocker and also a little bit as a pass catcher when he was over at Arkansas. James Flanagan, the true freshman, is intriguing, but he's also a true freshman. There will be a learning curve there, even though I have very high hopes for what James Flanagan can do as a true freshman. I just think that if Eli Raridan is able to stay healthy, he could open up the entire passing game, forcing defenses to kind of change their coverages because Notre Dame is going to try to run more 13 personnel where Eli Raridan is the only tight end out on the field. But when he's out there, he's going to be by far the biggest target for this quarterback. And even though I like some of the options, I like what Ty Washington can do, I like what James Flanagan can do, it's all going to be about Eli Raridan because if he plays anywhere near to the level of some of the other great tight ends that we have seen, like think Cole Kmet in 2019, Michael Mayer in 2020. Like the list goes on and on. Tyler Eifert, I mean, he won the Mackey Award, so that's really high expectations. But if he can play anywhere close to that, I think he has the ability to do so, it changes things for this Notre Dame offense. There's just less pressure on every other position group. And considering the Notre Dame offense has been built around the tight end position for so long, the fact that there's a bit of a question mark about what that room brings to the table this year is a little bit of uncharted territory, but if Eli Raridan steps up, all of that goes away, and this offense could take a huge step forward. So they have a bunch of intriguing options for the pass catchers. There's intriguing options at wide receiver with Fields, Greathouse, and then potentially Pauling and Faison, and then at tight end, you've got Eli Raridan, but it's just all kind of a question mark right now. Could be great. I don't think it could be bad, but it could be a little bit inconsistent, and that is going to be something that obviously has a huge effect on this offense, especially for a quarterback in their first year as a starter. But if Notre Dame is truly going to go far this year, they need their offensive line to be elite. Good isn't good enough for that group. They have to be great. But with so many able bodies, what is Joe Rudolph's plan going to be for the offensive line? That's coming up next. The biggest question I have about Notre Dame's offensive line is Joe Rudolph going to go with the best 5 or the best fit? And what I mean by that is he going to go with the best 5 offensive linemen in that room, or is he going to prioritize finding the best fit for every position on the offensive line? I think those are two very different things, okay? Because I think when you look at this group, one thing that is really exciting about Notre Dame's offensive line room is obviously they have a ton of talent, but they also have a ton of versatility, right? Like you look at what they have at left tackle. Anthony Knapp ran out there with the ones at the end of spring practice in that first drive in the spring game. Anthony Knapp kind of took everyone by surprise when he became the starting left tackle going into that game against Texas A&M. As a true freshman, especially one who was not the most highly touted true freshman in the offensive line room, that was pretty wild. It's even crazier thinking about it now, but it ended up working out pretty well for Notre Dame. But when Anthony Knapp started at Notre Dame in spring practice of last year, he was working on the interior. He left spring practice as like a backup center, and then they moved him out to the left tackle spot where he ended up starting 15 games before he got hurt. So the thing is, yeah, he does have way more experience playing left tackle, but he's also shown this offensive line coaching staff that he can play on the interior because that is actually where they had him pegged last spring. And then you've got Billy Schrauth. He's pretty dead set at left guard. I don't think they're moving him. Ashton Craig at center. I don't think they're moving him either. But then you have Charles Jagasaw, who ran out there as the starting right guard in the first drive of the spring game, but he was projected to be the starting left tackle last fall. Then he suffers that torn pec injury, sidelines him, then he comes back, and then he plays in the Penn State game to fill in for Rocco Spindler at right guard, and he was excellent. Joe Rudolph said in the spring that he watched that game. They watched the film of Charles Jagasaw. Remember, first game back, had not played at all in months while he recovered from that injury. Goes out there, plays phenomenally at the right guard spot, and then Joe Rudolph is looking at him like, yeah, we liked him at left tackle, but he might be the best right guard in the country. So that's a decision that he's going to have to face. And then at right tackle, you've got Emil Wagner, who looks pretty set at right tackle. Last fall, Joe Rudolph said that Emil Wagner is just more comfortable on the right side. They asked him if he'd be open to cross-training him a little bit in the left tackle spot. This spring, Wagner barely did anything in spring practice because he played basically 1,000 snaps for Notre Dame last season. But he said that they're going to kind of consider all options. So those are the projected 5 starters right now. But Joe Rudolph has shown us in the past that just because that's the group that goes out there at the start of fall camp does not mean that they are going to be the group of 5 that goes out there for the starting drive in the season opener. Because you've also got guys like Sullivan Absher, who's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He came in as a tackle. They moved him on the interior. Looked like he was getting reps at guard. But then he was out there as the starting center in the spring game because he's filling in for Ashton Craig, who's recovering from that torn ACL that he suffered last season. You could make the case that it's great to have Sullivan Absher, who can play left guard, center, or right guard, but for his own development, would it make more sense to just kind of put him in one spot and see if he can thrive there? Another question that Joe Rudolph is going to have to deal with. Gerby Lambert is a player who some people felt could beat out Anthony Knapp or Charles Jagasaw, whoever the case may be, to be one of the starting left tackles. You know Emil Wagner is going to be one, but Gerby Lambert came in with a ton of hype out of high school, borderline 5-star player, sat for basically the entirety of his freshman season, but looked ready to go this season. Then he suffers that shoulder injury in spring, and now who knows when he's going to come back. Marcus Freeman seemed optimistic that he'll be back in fall camp. If he is, great. He could absolutely compete for a starting job, but if he's not, he's probably not going to compete for a starting job until the season has already begun. So there's all kinds of different pieces that Joe Rudolph can move around here, and it's going to be up to him to figure out what does he want to do. Because in the case of Anthony Knapp, maybe he is the best option at left tackle because he has the most experience there. And then putting Charles Jagasaw at right guard just makes sense because now you have 5 of the best offensive linemen in that room. But let's say Gerby Lambert is one of those best 5. How do you shuffle the rest of the rotation? Because you know you need Charles Jagasaw on the field. You know you need Billy Schrauth on the field. You know you need Emil Wagner on the field. So that's 3. But then those other two spots, I think you can make a case. Because Ashton Craig, even though he has a ton of potential, he's coming off a serious injury. Anthony Knapp missed most of the spring. And also, he was a bit of a surprise when he came on last season. So it's going to be about what Joe Rudolph prioritizes. I think he's going to go with the best 5 offensive linemen and then figure out their position groups, because this guy is not afraid to take some risks. He went out there with Sam Pendleton in his first ever start at left guard last year, came out of nowhere. No one was talking about Sam Pendleton as a starting offensive lineman going into camp or at any point last year in the offseason. So maybe it's someone I haven't even mentioned. Maybe it is Will Black, the true freshman who was a 5-star coming out of high school. Maybe Silas Prescott is this year's biggest surprise, or Joe Otting on the interior. You truly cannot count anyone with this offensive line. One, because they're very talented, and two, Joe Rudolph is going to give them the opportunity. But given what he has shown us in the past, I think he's going to go with the 5 that he thinks are the most talented, and then they're going to kind of figure out the chemistry, the cohesiveness on the fly. Some might call it a risk, but it's worked out pretty well for Notre Dame the past 2 seasons, honestly. And I feel like they have so much talent in this room, they're going to figure it out one way or another. But that is the biggest question I have about the offensive line. I look at this offense and I see a ton of potential, but there's a lot of ways that this could go sideways. You got an inexperienced quarterback. You've got a wide receiver room that's pretty unproven, and the 2 most proven guys did it at different schools. And then you have an offensive line that's loaded with talent, but you got to kind of figure out how those pieces work, and you're not going to have any time to waste, because when you start on the road against Miami and then you take on Texas A&M at home, you got to be clicking. And maybe not on all cylinders, but last year it took the offense a while to get going. They have no time to wait this year, and I have confidence that they're going to figure it out, but don't be surprised if there are some bumps and bruises along the way. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Irish on YouTube. We are right there at 10,000, but also be sure to subscribe if you're listening to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. Just happy you're here. Hope you subscribe and hope you tune in tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you then.